Hi, everybody. Just waiting for our speakers to turn on their cameras, and then we can get started shortly. Thanks, folks. I know I said you don't have to do anything, but I guess we did have to turn on the camera, so noted for next time. We're all learning this new platform. Thank you for being in it with us.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm seeing the numbers going up, so I think folks are trickling in from the keynote speech in the main hall. So we'll just get started in a moment.
Cool.
Jai, I can send you a message when you're good to start. Is that okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, folks.
Where is this message going to come from?
The voice of God.
God.
You're good to start. Yes.
You go. Cool. Thanks. Well, good morning, everybody, and good afternoon for those on the East Coast. My name is Jai Lattis. I'm going to be the moderator today of the panel REINVENT, Empowering Perspectives, where we're going to talk about the importance of diverse voices and perspectives in front and behind the camera. So quickly, just want to introduce myself, and then I'm going to introduce the wonderful panel that we have. So like I said, Jai Lattis. I run a company called Creative Futures Collective. We are a diversity, equity, and inclusion marketplace for the creative industries, where we put a focus, though, on unearthing talent from disenfranchised communities, training them up, and then finding them careers and jobs in the creative industry. So that's what I do day in and day out. So this work is quite important to me. Want to introduce the panel now. Really great panel we have today. So first up, we've got Julie Christies, the producer and CEO at Tandem Pictures. Aldous Hodge, entrepreneur, producer, and actor with over 30 years experience in the entertainment industry, representing his company 9B today. Kane Lee, head of content at Baobab Studios, and Jonathan Knight, the GM of games at the New York Times. How's everyone going today?
Good. Real good.
Thank you.
Great.
So
Happy to be here.
Very
excited. So let's just jump straight into it. We were having a pretty interesting conversation earlier, but this whole topic of diversity, equity, inclusion, really started becoming a hot topic in corporate America probably about 9 months ago, after the murder of George Floyd. And before that, people would say, oh, this is important to us, this is important to us, but weren't really interested in taking any action. After that event, companies said a lot of stuff, but are they really doing stuff? And that's kind of what I want to dive into today. Aldous, we were talking earlier about that, but what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the whole post movement of that?
Y'all sure y'all got the time? Because I got a lot to see. First of all, good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. Definitely happy to be represented with my team, 9B. So in terms of how the entertainment industry and to a degree some of the corporate world responded to 2020 regarding Mr. Floyd, what I noticed and how people approached me was that they continue to treat, as they usually do, they continue to treat the Black experience as a trend. What I found is that people like to commoditize Black pain by commercializing the Black experience. And what I mean by that is, oh, 2020, we got to do something. Let's get on it. 2020 is like every year for Black people. Like, let's just be honest. We had a different experience with it in 2020 just because of how we all experienced the rest of the world, the pandemic. We were having to sit at home and do these things in a different way, right? So people got to absorb it. They couldn't distract themselves and run from it. As entertainment has approached me about it, I was approached by several different films, right? Who, hey, look, we want to talk about this. Let's talk about racism, this and that. We got this movie we want to produce, and we would love you to produce and star. And I say, okay, all right. Now, granted, the entire executive board is white. The writer's white. I said, all right, cool. So I read the story, get through it. And this is 3 different back-to-back productions, all very separate. And I read the story and I point out all of the things that would be culturally offensive, culturally misleading. And I say, hey, guys, I appreciate the effort. But my first producerial decision would be to go get a Black writer of merit if you want to actually talk about the subject, if you want to talk about racism. And what I often experience is they all said consecutively, no, we don't want to do that. And they walk away. And I try to explain to people, if you want to talk about this project, the subject matter, right? The subject matter you're presenting actually affects Black people. The representation actually affects Black people. You're jumping on this now because for you, you just woke up to racism in 2020. This is a trend for you. But for us, we live this every single day. So if you're going to do a project about Black people, you want to use the Black audience to fill your pockets, you want to make money off of Black people and Black culture, you have to make money with Black people and put them in the right positions to do the job adequately. Stop using us and work with us, because we're tired of being seen as a trend because your narrow perspective of what happened in 2020 is all the time. Let's not forget. But the way Hollywood sometimes typically jumps on these issues is, oh, this is hot right now. So this is our window of opportunity right now. Let's jump on it right now. And all we're saying is, if you're going to do something about that, do it to elevate and celebrate and help us and contribute something to us. Stop using us.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think you touched on then, and I think is really important when talking about you spoke about experience, and we use the term lived experience a lot. You know, like when companies or anyone is kind of looking at DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, I think they're framing it the wrong way as well, right? So, for example, you know, to me, true diversity, it's about lived experience. It's about unique insights, thoughts, and perspectives, not necessarily the color of someone's skin or their gender or their sexual orientation. And I think that's what a lot of entertainment companies and corporate companies are kind of looking at. They're going, oh, okay, we can just fill this quota here and we can just do that.
Right.
They're kind of bringing in people that are coming from the same lived experience as people that have worked their system before. So, you know, this panel is called Empowering Perspective. So I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit when hiring a diverse workforce, like how does that impact your business, and how important, to your point, Aldous, is the lived experience of the person?
Mm-hmm.
Open up. It's open.
I'm gonna talk because
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
I can say that, you know, I started Tandem Pictures in 2010 initially because I wanted to give more opportunity to women behind and in front of the camera. And I came up as a, you know, person who coordinated and production managed and line produced until I landed an executive job at a film company of all white men. And I loved that job, and it was a wonderful team of people, but we weren't telling the stories that I started to realize I was really passionate about telling. And the company evolved very naturally, because I think when you start to look at one underrepresented community, it's not a hard leap to say, oh, you know, women are underrepresented. Well, so are LGBTQIA, so are Black people and all people of color. There's a lot of ageism in what we do too. So my evolution happened because I was willing to look at my own lived experience and say, it's not just my lived experience, but so many of the storytellers that I want to work with, that I want to collaborate with, are having an experience in there with a different point of view. And I do think that makes the best type of storytelling. So we became a company that did have a mission to hire diversely. And that mission changed to an intersectional environmentalist point of view. Because for us, it's also not a far leap to understand that any type of social injustice, racial injustice, is also linked to climate injustice. and that the communities that are first impacted by the climate crisis are the very communities that we're here to talk about today, which are underrepresented and underserved communities. So for us, we looked at last year, among all the things that happened last year, the Academy came out with their, diversity and inclusion mandate for 2024. And my partner, Jonathan, and I looked at what Tandem had done in 2019 and the two films that we released in 2020, The Surrogate and Black Bear. And we took a hard look at what we did, and we were glad and happy and proud that not only did we exceed those diversity and inclusion standards, but it wasn't just in the cast, it was our entire team. And that's the position of privilege that I know I'm in, as someone who hires crew, and also someone who, although I've faced challenges in my life, my skin color has not been one of them. So it's my job to understand that diversity and inclusion is a title, but what it really means is not being lazy and expanding my own Rolodex to really look at craftsmen and artists and stories I want to tell, and tell them in the most genuine way possible, but also in the best way possible, because I have seen it time and time again. The more you include different voices, different people, different artists, the vision of what you're all there to make anyway just exponentially becomes stronger, and the story will be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, because I mean, there's so much data out there. Like, for example, companies that embrace DEI are 70% more likely to capture new markets. For example, companies that embrace diversity, they outperform the national medians of other organizations. Young people want to work for companies that embrace it as well, right? But I think one of the most important things, and I love your take on this, Kane. I'm going to throw this to you, Kane, as well. But the way that the world is moving towards, America is moving towards, is people of color are going to be the majority in America by 2032. And I mean the majority of working class, so 18 to 64-year-olds. So that's the next consumer. That's voters, constituents, investors, employees. That the minority is going to become the majority, right? If you look at the entertainment world and you look at corporate America, that's not represented. So, Kane, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about, you work for a company with a female CEO, Asian female CEO. How has that impacted your business and helped you having different perspectives and yourself as well?
Well, the benefits of it have been, immediately working at a studio that's at the intersection of Silicon and Hollywood, with a female minority CEO. It's been a tremendous impact. You see it right away. From day one, she wanted to tell stories that have diverse perspectives and to put people behind the voices. We're an animation studio, so our equivalent of putting someone in front of the camera is going to be through the acting, the voice acting. So we've been able to work with people from Native American leaders to John Legend, Oprah, Lupita Nyong'o, Ali Wong, Constance Wu. So it's been really sort of refreshing, because I've been in the industry for long enough to know the difference between when the leadership puts it as a priority. But I think that it's not just about doing it for the sake of diversity. I think it's doing it for the audience, like you're saying. So there's two different factors that I've really noticed in the last sort of 5 to 7 years. One is that the audience has been becoming more and more increasingly global across the world, right? And so you have platforms like Netflix where localized productions, I'm watching a German TV series, binge watching it, things that I would not have done otherwise. So there's a demand for more diverse content because people are getting used to seeing things subtitled or seeing people of different colors and cultures more frequently. But the second thing is also is the digital revolution. So we are much closer as content creators to our audiences, and our audiences are becoming increasingly diverse. There's a decentralization in the media that is encouraging the types of people that people see around them every day, wanting to see them on the screen. So those two factors are extremely important for us to think about, because there actually is this demand. There's actually this latent demand for having diverse perspectives. Roger Ebert said the great superpower of cinema is empathy. And if you're not putting people who can create truly empathetic and authentic experiences on the screen, the audiences are going to know that. But if you are able to hire writers and directors and storytellers, producers, even C-level executives who can tell the difference between something that feels real, has texture, has a real sort of depth in terms of being able to explore themes and characters that are true to the world today, then your show is going to grab audiences like no other.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of, you speak about the content side, and I want to throw over Jonathan to you for a second, because I guess outside of hiring at the New York Times, how are you guys thinking about the content that you create and the games that you create to I guess, make a more inclusive environment?
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm really happy to be here. First of all, incredible panel. And I'm learning a lot already today. I work on games. I've always worked on games. So coming from a little bit of a different perspective. And as a white man who's hiring people, I have a narrow perspective. And so it's really important to me to kind of think about that. I will tell just a little bit of a story around, what we do and how we're changing. New York Times is seen as an institution, right? And this is a time when we need to be challenging institutions, and I believe that the company is really committed to that. But it's also about what we're sort of doing at all levels of the company. So for games, we work on the crossword puzzle. It's been around for 75 years. It is an institution. It's a magical puzzle. It's a magical experience, but it is not approachable. It is not representative. It is not inclusive of the audiences that we want to be reaching. So many more people could be, enjoying this experience. And so, I kind of set about to take real action against that. We have had the most, number of unique puzzle constructors submitting puzzles to the Times ever last year. We have the most debut constructors ever, the most female constructors ever last year. Those are great milestones. But, it was more about sort of what are we doing, like, to change the institution and the mechanics of what we do so they're sustainable. I hired last year our first ever editorial director. She's a Black woman, and that's really exciting. But my story about that is that I said to her, "Hey, Everdeen, here's what we need to do. We need to have more diverse puzzle constructors submitting to us so we get more diverse points of view." And she's like, "Jonathan, you're thinking about it wrong. Think about it backwards. What we need to do is change our standards internally for what makes a good puzzle, what makes a good clue, what makes a good answer. How are we making these decisions about which puzzles to publish and the content of the puzzle? It doesn't do any good to just have more diverse puzzles coming in the door if you haven't changed internally what you think, a good puzzle is." And I was like, awesome. Like, I'm wrong. You're right. Let's go do that. And, for me, it was an example of how diverse hiring, it's not just a quota. It's about, bringing those people in and then letting them make those institutional changes and lead. And, I'm really excited for the future. So, that's my story. And we're working hard to make those institutional changes and not just have it be, a box we're checking.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because I think a lot of this for a lot of people is about a quota still, right? And that's not the way to look at it. We've just heard 4 incredible examples of a real world experience and how that kind of alters points of view. The other thing that I kind of come across is how companies or employers or organizations or whoever kind of look at this as far as DEI hiring and pipelines and stuff as an act of charity. We all know that's not the case. Aldous, can you explain the difference between, kind of companies looking at giving someone a job versus giving somebody a career, and how it's not a charitable act?
Yeah. Well, I think that is how it's often seen. I know in my conversations when I'm facing opposition with some of my, team in terms of whatever job I'm working on with a producerial level, there's the thought process of, well, if we're going to integrate, if we're going to be diverse, why? And my question is, why do you have to think about it like that? Where does the qualification for the job come in? Because as a Black man, I'm tired of being reduced to the color of my skin to then match and justify the qualification of my skill set when my white counterparts don't have to go through the same thing. You know, what we did with 9B Collective, we are, you know, a conceptual art studio. We design everything from world building, character design, costume design. My two partners, Phil Boutte Jr. and Michael Wandy, are brilliant artists who work at a very, very high level and have been doing so for a very long time. I know that they both recognized a huge deficit in the market because, and if, you know, I can share, Phil has often shared the story about having worked about 14 years in the industry, and I believe it was his 13th year in the industry where it was the first time he sat next to another Black artist. And you're talking about working on a conceptual art that deals with worlds that are based on many variations, right? So why don't you have the representation in the room culturally to actually design and show what this world looks like from a real experience? And it always comes down to the why. I find the same thing when it comes to writers. When I talk to producers about putting the right writers in the room to respectfully handle the narrative of any story they want to tell. I've literally had two, on different occasions, two white men tell me I can write stories for Black men. And look, you know, we don't need to, like, I've talked to Denzel and Andre Brower about this. Why? What do you want to do? What do you want to change it to? And I'm saying, look, I'm not trying to say that you are incapable of writing a good story, but you're not qualified to write an authentic Black narrative. If you want to put this story out, you have to put the right person in position to actually give you the best quality of work possible. So when it comes down specifically to culture, move out of your own way to put the right person in that is best for the overall product and the overall team. But why are we always marginalized when it comes down to the idea of integration, when integration is a necessity? We as artists, our job is to reflect what the world actually is. And when I stand outside, I see all kinds of colors and cultures. That is what makes the world tick. That is what makes the world beautiful. I think that in terms of the metrics, what we have seen over the past few years, because of the boom in, you know, the social media and the YouTube, what we've seen is a lot more content creators being able to produce their own content. And what's being tracked is the fact that a lot of these content creators that are doing some really cool stuff are coming from all over the world, and they have their own power to create their own medium for their very specific audience. So the networks and the studios are catching on, saying, oh, wow, look at this. Look what's going on over here in Africa. Look what's going on over here in Spain. Look what's going on over here in Brazil. They're tracking this. So for them, becomes monetary, and it's about the economics. We need to get out in front of this. So now we need to, you know, engage inclusion. Black Panther, for instance. Well, we don't know how to do it for years. We don't know how to build the world. Let's da-da-da. Black Panther comes out as a cultural phenomenon, makes oodles of money. And now, oh, Black people make money. Look, Black culture in America has been one of the dominant spending groups for a long time. But that money goes outside of our culture. The dollar doesn't stay within the Black community. But when you see something like Black Panther pulling all that money, then the studios are forced to pay attention, because they say now we cannot use the excuse that Black films do not transfer economically across the world. When in fact, that's never been the truth. We have always succeeded worldwide. So why is the conversation even able to be introduced when it comes to us trying to maintain a position of equity? And like you were saying, it's giving somebody a job is saying, well, oof, we have 5 castmates and we realize we need to put somebody in there, brown or Black. Let's put a token in there. They put them in there, and then that gives somebody a job. I can go pay my bills. That's not equity. I don't want a job. I want a position. Give me a position of growth. And again, with 9B, that is what our goal is, because we specifically formed this company to facilitate opportunities for the Black and BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous people of color, women and men, because women are very underrepresented when it comes to the art space as well. And we specifically want to grant opportunities and open up doors in places where the doors have been shut and haven't even been offered. And these artists are brilliant. I'm talking artists we have artists from all over the world. And when you go, man, Africa, we got artists from Ghana, from Nigeria. They're insane. Their skill level is insane, but their opportunities are diminished and they're not given the same sort of chances, because when they step into a room, they're immediately looked at differently based on their proximity and what they look like. Whereas in our case, I'm just speaking in general, in terms of dealing with their white counterparts, it's not about having to have accomplished so much, having to have earned so many accolades, having to have done so many jobs. It's just like, you know what, you have potential, put you in there. But when it comes to the Black and brown community, for any, it's not about your potential. It's about, what have you done? Prove to me that you're valuable. I'm not going to take a risk. And the approach to hiring and the necessity to hire is unfair and unbalanced and different when it comes to us. It has to be thought, why do we need, as opposed to saying we actually do need, because it's the natural way of things. Let's roll into the natural order of things.
Yeah.
So why is so much priority put on keeping that door closed and shut? And I think it comes down to a fear of the narrative when it comes to job security and control. And I'm not talking about majority versus minority. I'm not talking about majority in numbers. I'm talking about majority in power. The people in majority of power fear sharing that power because they understand how brilliant and great the work is, but they also know how the world works, and they see that growth in terms of the increase in the skill set, the quality of production. They see the increase coming from the BIPOC community, and there's a fear of being, I don't want to say erased or forgotten, but replaced. Because even if you think about the terms, we have, people over here, and then we have people of color. Why are people of color all grouped into one box over here, and white people get their own box over here? If we're talking about equal opportunity, tell me about your skill set, and let's see if you actually earn the position you have. And if you're not qualified, step out. But unfortunately, the basis is that there are so many people who are not qualified to be in the positions that they are in, yet they still get to maintain and keep their positions. Why?
Yeah, I think it's sorry, Julie.
I was just going to say, what you're saying is so important, and I hope that this is a real learning moment for some of my fellow white colleagues, to tell you the truth. I think, what Jonathan also wanted to just say, I thought what you acknowledged was so important when you made space for your colleague who's coming from a female perspective and a Black perspective to share something with you, because it is only in that way, if we are willing to expand our viewpoint, that we will ever see behavioral change. And the biggest problem is, of course, that America was founded on deep and horrific institutional racism and flat out abuse. And we're all still catching up and trying to get past that period in our history that feels like we never really get past it, because we've never dealt with the institution of how that happened in the first place. And so when Aldous is talking about why hasn't this happened yet, the reason is because the people who have always held the power and the money haven't fully caught up yet. They still, the word charity really bothers me, because in any situation, the charity isn't enough. It's a first step. You have to figure out, so now I've helped you a little bit, but how can I give you an opportunity where you can change your own set of circumstances, where you can be the director of your destiny, where you don't need the quote unquote charity, right? And it's a painful thing to discuss, but when you are looking at institutions that are run by predominantly, white patriarchy, and they're the ones who have always controlled the purse strings, then it is a complete relearning. It is a complete education of how we make space for what will ultimately end up making you more money, end up getting you more critical success, and do the opposite of what Aldous was pointing out with taking advantage of a community. The opposite will happen, in that we will start to actually see that how we all walk on this planet Earth isn't so desperately disconnected and disparate, that every human being has a story, and that story is worthwhile because we're walking this earth together. How, for me, it's not only the why, it's the how, which is why environmentalism is so important to me, and celebrating excellence of all kinds is so important to me, because we have one planet with this species that we are living with and working with and caring for, and it is so myopic and disgraceful at this point to look in your own four walls and really feel like, well, this is my experience, so therefore it's the most important experience, right, and I should have the advantage over someone else. Yeah. So it's unacceptable.
And well, I think really, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just going to say that, I think what you're both saying is, you look at it from a systemic point of view. Yeah. And so many people will say, well, the system is broken. The system has never been broken. It's been designed that way to, and that's what you're saying. It's like, yeah, why would they want to change it? That's why we're not seeing the changes in corporate America. That's why we're not seeing the changes in the entertainment industry. It's because the system works for the select few. Mm-hmm. Why will they change that? How does that happen?
And if I may, Julie, I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying about the charity, because you're absolutely right. And I'll be quick. The thought process going into it is a charity. Oh, I'm gonna hire this Black person, I'm gonna hire this woman, I'm gonna hire this LGBTQ for charity, right? For a job position. But a job position is transactional. You hire somebody, they produce work that, like you said, fattens their pockets, right? We all make money together because it does take everybody making money to making this thing work together. So it's not a charity at all. And that is a part of the thinking, the antiquated thinking that does have to be removed. Is, oh, I'm doing this, I deserve a pat on the back. I'm not giving you a pat on the back for something that you're supposed to do.
Especially when someone is qualified. It's just the wrong word.
Exactly. Like, no, because now again, it goes back to feeding that ego of thinking that, oh, I'm now doing this great thing. It's like, but if you hire somebody and they do a fantastic job for you, you should be grateful for that work and that talent. You should be in a position of humility, not a one celebrated for your superiority. No.
The other thing that I find quite interesting, and to both of your points as well, is when you were talking about kind of people of color having to do so much more, be so much more exceptional to get into positions. And the one thing that I see from the work that we do is how when companies look at hiring, say, white people, it's seen as like, oh, let's just give this person a chance. Whereas you bring in someone that's different in, it's what's the risk assessment against this, right? So I guess my point is, like, one of the things is looking at, okay, how do we expand getting diverse candidates in the door? But more importantly, how, and I'll throw this to you, Jonathan and Kane, but how do you make them feel more welcome once they're there? Because it's not just about getting people in the door and ticking the box. It's about actually changing culture.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I'll just quickly say, I think I have optimism. I think there is some good news just on what I'm seeing, that there is, real, again, systemic change that's, like the way we think about hiring now. My eyes have been opened. We use a program called Tap Recruit now to edit our job descriptions for more inclusive language, to kind of watch out for words like, we want someone who fits, or, we want someone who, has a great, attitude or energy. These kind of like phrases that don't have any real meaning as to the job that you're trying to have the person do. And so there's software now that can help you realize where your language in the job description itself is not inclusive. And then, we have systems in place now where, we need diversity in our candidate pools. We need diversity in, the people that are doing the interviews, the panels. How are we picking the panels of people that are doing these interviews? What are those people asking? What questions are they asking, and why? And so we have process now to, make sure that we're meeting ahead of time and going, well, what questions are you going to ask, and why are you going to ask those questions, and what's your role on this panel, and what's your role in this panel? I think it's awesome, and I just feel like there is optimism there and potential there, and it is true like what you say, like it doesn't stop there. You have candidates start, and what's your onboarding process like? How are you making those people, how are you empowering everybody when they show up to do their best and not be marginalized once they get in the door? So it carries all the way through, and I'm optimistic because it's a huge mountain to climb, but there are tools that companies are starting to use that are not just lip service, that they're things that if any one person comes or goes, that system that we've agreed upon is still there.
Okay.
I mean, my perspective is coming more from a startup and an indie animation studio ecosystem where we have a lot less hurdles because we're our own bosses. And so I very much encourage like younger generations to do that, to be your own boss, to start your own studio, to start your own collective like Aldous did. Like, this is an opportunity for you to control the diversity of your team and the diversity of the storytelling that you choose to do. I think it's much harder for bigger legacy media corporations to reform from within. But I'm really happy to hear what Jonathan is saying is happening at the Times, et cetera. But for the people who have the energy and the drive and the passion, and you can be of all ages to do that. Our co-founder Eric Darnell had done 5 movies consecutively at DreamWorks Animation, and he wanted to do something new, and he teamed up with Maureen Fan, our CEO, who had always wanted to go into animation, but her immigrant parents told her she would be poor and destitute, which is a very common sort of myth amongst, first and second generation immigrants in this country. It's like, you can't be on the big screen, you can't be on the small screen. That is for, sort of the majority of the white people. So us acting in a startup ecosystem, taking advantage of being able to sort of pave our own path. It's a lot harder to do. It's a lot more work. I won't lie. There are many sleepless nights, and you have to figure out how to pay your own employees and keep your business alive and pivot when you have to. Everyone here knows that. It is insane, but it is so rewarding because at the end of the day, you get to stand behind the product, the stories that you get to tell. We've, all of our projects that we've been doing, like the United Nations hardly ever partners with Hollywood because of the politics behind it. They tried our interactive experience, which was an all-female cast led by Jennifer Hudson and Kate Winslet, and they partnered with us, and we were like their, part of their launch partner for their Act Now climate change campaign, because we were able to tell a story from the female perspective, from the other perspective, about our relationship with nature, and give voice to the forest like Jennifer Hudson does, but also to women who have been historically persecuted and called witches over the century, and demonized because we often demonize what we don't know. And so it's from our perspective, it's all been about just trying to take the reins, because I've been at in the situations of a much larger hierarchy and structure. I remember the first time I had a live action TV series and I snuck in an Asian character into it. And the person that we wanted to hire had a slight accent. And I remember, the very liberal Hollywood executive telling us, well, don't you want the one who doesn't have the accent? And we just want the best actor, and those types of conversations we've had kind of in our, they affect you and they impact you and they change your perspective. But if you can, when you are able to do something on your own with people who are like-minded and want to do the same thing and want to affect change, you can make sure, stories like that never happen again.
Yeah, incredible.
Jai, can I just throw in one thing? This is a non sequitur, but if we could make witch not be a bad word as a community, that would be so great, because witch is like, intuitive intelligence with a dash of magic. And isn't that what women are, for goodness sake? Like, can we all get over that being a curse word? And also, as an entrepreneur, just for anyone who's, aspiring or a student or something out there, when I started Tandem, I'm a kid from Brooklyn. I come from an immigrant family. My son is first generation. Didn't know anyone who would give me money to start a business, but I came up with a business plan that would generate its own money. And that has worked for me for the last 10 years, because I have clients on the brand side and work with New York Times and NBC Universal and all sorts of different brands, that money not only takes care of the people who work at Tandem Pictures, but it's used to directly develop the types of stories we want to tell and do it in the way that we're passionate about. So I can keep control over who we hire, and I can say, this practicing sustainably and getting a green or gold seal from the Environmental Media Association for having a green set is how I want to do it, and that's how we're going to do it. So if you can come up with a plan that doesn't require initially you taking someone else's money, I think you'll be very successful.
Awesome. Hey, I want to throw it over to the audience because I'm seeing some great questions coming through from everyone. So I'm going to bit of Q&A before we get cut off. This one is the most upvoted from Emily. But she said, I feel people often don't feel comfortable to talk about race and racism because they feel like they don't have the right words and they're afraid to make a mistake and say the wrong thing. Tips for helping feel comfortable to talk about these issues.
Asking for tips on how to talk about it. I think acknowledging that it's real and true, and whomever you're having a conversation with. I mean, I like to enter conversations seeking to learn more than I contribute, right? That means listening and hearing more than debating and being prepared to defend. As my father says, I don't debate you in feeling, I debate in fact. Feeling is sometimes a dangerous road to travel because it's always personal, it's biased there. But when we're talking about facts, let's talk about how equity has been deliberately removed from certain cultures, and especially in this country, removed from Black culture in terms of how we can move forward on a scale balanced to that of our white counterparts, right? So when you talk about racism, all these things are involved, and you have to talk about it from a place of honesty, seeking to learn and seeking to figure out where the progress goes as opposed to defending. Oftentimes I'll talk to someone about racism who is not Black, who is seeking to defend the stance on, well, that's how you feel, but it's not that way because of yada, yada, yada. But I'm saying, look, this is my learned experience. This is my real experience in this country. This is how I have gone through, and this is what I have dealt with. So I'm asking you to acknowledge what it is that I have gone through with a degree of empathy and understanding, just like I acknowledge and respect you and your experience, so that we can now move forward to create a better experience, right? But it has to come from a place of wanting to learn and actually wanting to engage the ugly truth of what it is and what it has been. Because when racism is talked about, it's oftentimes swept under the rug as though, oh, it's in the past. It's not. I just said this recently on a panel the other day that someone was saying, oh, look how far we've come, and haven't we progressed? And we have a Black president, like, yay. And I said, having a Black president is not progress. Him in his position, doing what he had to do, yes, he made some progressive steps. But the thing is, during his tenure as president, most of the news was focused on the fact that he was a Black president. Again, pointing towards his color more than his politics. The fact that we still don't have equity as a community in this country speaks volumes, right? So if you think that that's equity or that's progress, it's really not. So we have to understand what needs to continually be pushed forward and actually have the real conversation, because certainly some of these things, like some issues, have only grown to what is culturally appropriate. back in the day, and I said this back in the day, enslavement for the times was culturally appropriate. So a lot of people had the rose-colored glasses on, they could ignore it. There are things today that are horrible that are culturally accepted because it does not affect you directly. It does not affect your home. But when it does, then you wake up to say, oh, let me address this. We have an opportunity to work together and address these things sooner because they're out there now. That's what we saw last year. A lot of people coming to, oh my God, this is really happening. We've been saying this for a long time. Oh my God, Mr. Floyd, Miss Breonna Taylor, Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. Yes. And Eric Garner, and Philando Castile, and Sandra Bland, and Tamir Rice, and Mike Brown, and Trayvon Martin, and Emmett Till, and so many names. How long will you ignore the problem before you now have to address it and step up to it? Let's talk about it in a real way, seeking to actually address the issue with progress, not seeking to defend so that we can remain comfortable as we are.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of questions from people, from, I guess, job seekers and creatives, coming from diverse backgrounds themselves, asking stuff like, you know, how can they stand out as a creative to be hired, not just because of their, you know, ethnic background or their diverse background. Any thoughts on that?
For me, I always say, as a writer or a director, you know, get as close as you can to your story. What makes you special and unique is inherently you. There's no one else who has that experience. The story that you're telling has your unique point of view, and if you can be brave enough to really get as close as possible, don't cop out when things get difficult, write the truth, you're going to find producing partners who want to work with you, and you're going to find partners, period, who want to support a vision that's strong because it's unique and it's unflinching.
I totally agree. I think there's so much we have to do to change things for the better, but there is, there is a visible shift in the industry where, we can kind of see through the stories that are authentic and are differentiated and unique. Like our most exciting projects that we're embarking upon are ones where the filmmakers, the storytellers who pitch them to us, are digging in very deeply into their backgrounds. We have a project from South Africa, which, is my favorite meeting of the week. We have one where it's a visual animated poem that is coming to life in virtual reality. And it was initially going to be very universal, but we encouraged the filmmaker to lean into his Korean roots because it was actually based upon his ancestors. And somehow, magically, that only made something we were already in love with even more deeply felt, even though it was more specific to his specific culture and background. So I completely concur with Julie that you be the best you, and it'll find people like us and people in the BRIC community to connect with, because these stories need to be told and are the best stories to be told.
Something's just popped up that's quite interesting because it's something that I see a lot of, and it's around kind of like the hiring of kind of like more back office jobs, I guess, in the industry. But the question here is, how do you help being hired? Because you help diversity, not really getting opportunities to be creative. And I'll give you an example of what I see through our job, that, we'll talk to Studio X or record label Y, right? About, hey, we've got this incredible talent looking for some opportunities. And the opportunities that usually they'd be like, yeah, we want to do this. But a lot of the opportunities are kind of like, like admin sort of stuff, or they could work the front desk, or they could, do this, and not getting those opportunities that people of the same age and the same experience, but I guess that the white counterparts that maybe went to that 4-year USC degree or whatever, are getting to be like, cool, you can be a junior A&R person, or cool, you can be a junior production assistant, or whatever it is, junior development person. Any advice or just thoughts on that? You know, people, you know, yes, the door might be open, but you're not getting the as good jobs or the as good opportunities for growth, like you mentioned before, Aldous, about, you know, having an actual pathway to growth.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of what Kane was saying earlier, in that you know, I can't teach somebody who is not willing to learn, or not, you know, and I can't show somebody who's not willing to see me, right? So we go start our own things. So I encourage people to build your own teams. I mean, look, one of my partners, you know, at 9B, Phil, I've known him for 22 years. Who knew we would come to this point of you know, starting something together, you know what I mean? But build your own opportunity. Where the door closes, then you become the door. You become that. And I think in terms of how we change our mindset, because as an actor, I've been told no many times. I've gone into auditions where they said, oh, you know, you're, you know, because they look at Black people are looked upon in the industry generally, or at least, you know, growing up, there was a poor perception of who and what we are culturally. And I've gone into auditions where, because I was articulate, they told me, hey, look, you're not Black enough. And I'm like, so you think Black people are ignorant? You think that we don't have proper diction? We're not, you know, like, so you deal with that, right? Things that are not within your control. But wherever there's a lack, wherever is a negativity introduced, I search for the positivity in it. If a job is taken away from me, now I say, okay, here's an open opportunity for me to go figure out what the real goal is here, the real pathway, the real gain. And with that mindset, I have often found it, because I realize I'm not working, trying to get a job, or even trying to establish a career. There's a purpose beyond to what it is I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do it. And my primary thing is I want to become a person who can help facilitate job opportunities for other people, help them manage and create and build their dreams. And aside from my team that I grew up with, you know, in terms of my family supporting me, we all in this hustle together. There was a man when I was 21 who gave me a job because it was based on my merit. His name is John Rogers. So this is a TV show I did called Leverage. John Rogers and Chris Downey co-created it. Dean Devlin was the producer of it. And I tip my hat to all of these gentlemen. But when I auditioned, I was 21. They had already had a cast member hired, a white gentleman, right? John, you know, a white brother, you know, older, probably in his like late 40s, early 50s at the time or whatever. But he saw me. Saw me run through the audition, hit the joke, all the little twists and turns that I needed to hit. He went to Dean. He said, "Look, man, I think we got an issue because I saw this kid and he's right for the role." And Dean said, "All right, look at the tape." And he said, "Yeah, we got a problem. We got to change," because they already had another actor. And John told me, "Look, 9 times out of 10, the right actor for the role doesn't get the role. This time, I wanted the right actor to get the role, so I went and fought." So because this man saw me, forget the color, forget the statistics, because he actually saw me for who I was, for what my talent was, what my skill set was, he gave me a job that helped lead to a career, right? And this is a white, and this is what it looks like when you have that cohesive unity for people appreciating and understanding how to work together based off of merit and just skill and respect for one's craft, and not considering all of the unnecessary extras of, well, I mean, I don't know if Black people track this well in this demographic, and I don't. No, he's like, look, this is what the best thing for the job is. So because he set the standard and he set the example, I had faith ever since then, and I knew that it was out there, and I knew that there's allyship, and I knew that there's a lot of people out there doing it. When you don't find people who are actually doing that, trust me, they're out there, but you got to be that person. And then you got to go find other people to build that community, because we as people have more power than any particular problem ever. And love and faith and hope will always be more powerful than negativity and ignorance. Our job is to create opportunities and teach people. So let's get on our job.
I think that's such a good point. And just to very quickly piggyback, if you are being offered a position that perhaps isn't as much money as you know you're worth, or perhaps that is your skill set is well beyond whatever entry position is that you're being offered, look at the track record of the company and look at the executives. I think Jonathan and Kane and Jai, you're probably all more qualified to speak to this than me. But I'll say even in independent film, if my company's offered a first look deal and I do a little bit of digging and I see that the executives and all of their financiers are white men of a certain age and there's no representation of women and there's no people of color and there's no LGBTQIA, and that first deal ain't for me. My filmmakers aren't going to do well there, and I'm not going to do what I want to do as a producer, which is get these stories out into the world. So, you can look at who's in charge and then look at who those people have hired, what size are their teams, who reports to them, and make some, conscious choices, because at the same time, as artists, you shouldn't have to starve, and there's no shame in paying your rent. So if there's a company that's offering you something and you say, well, you know what, they have a pretty good track record and it's not where I want to be, but clearly there's room for growth in this company, and I'm the person Aldous is talking about, I am at my best, and I am going to get noticed, then there's a chance there. And if not, you already know your own self-worth, and you can find something else while you're doing something that's not, allowing you to really vibrate to your fullest potential.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for today. It's been a fun conversation. It's been a good conversation. I hope the viewers out there take something away from it. Just quickly, Julie, Kane, Jonathan, Aldous, thank you. But final words, what would you like, each of you, what would you like someone to take away from today? Jonathan?
I mean, I learned a lot myself, and that's the, I feel selfish in that regard, because I personally took a lot away from this. But I would just say, let's have optimism and let's work together to solve these problems. Let's acknowledge that they're real. Let's be vulnerable, be humble, admit when we're wrong, and work together to make a better world.
Amazing. Kane?
I'll just say, don't wait. Do not wait. Just go and create. Like, don't ask for permission. You ask for forgiveness if you have to, but the world's not waiting for you. Time's not waiting for you. Just do whatever you can, however you can. And you're only going to help the people who come after you by doing that.
Julie?
First, thanks, guys, for having this conversation today. What a pleasure. And when we're all able to meet in person and have a coffee or something, I'd love to do that. But I would just say, Aldous touched on this. There's nothing more powerful than acknowledgement. If you can listen and acknowledge someone else's experience truthfully, that's half the battle. And then if you are part of the white community, if you can do your best to acknowledge and not take the pain of your friend that is talking to you, do not make it about yourself. If you need to have an emotional reaction or something, have it, but do your best to not reframe what your friend is telling you in terms of your own sadness for their experience, but rather acknowledge that experience and listen to someone instead of personalizing it so much that it then becomes about you. It's a very tricky thing, and it's something that I'm still learning as an empathetic person myself, but we don't want to do that as white people. We don't want to draw the attention to ourselves instead of allowing the spotlight to shine where it needs to.
Thank you, Julie. Aldous?
First of all, I'm honored to be among this esteemed panel. Thank you all for allowing me to run my mouth. I'll say just a few points on the thought process for sharing the space for equity and opportunity. It's not a lack of opportunity for you or for a particular group. It only serves to expand the opportunities that are out there. There's monopoly untapped opportunities that are just sitting there waiting for the right people to fill those spots. And just trust me, once you grow that network, when you can be a part of that pivotal change, now you're building a legacy. So let's seek to move towards purpose and legacy building ambitions, right? In terms of giving everybody a chance to grow and rise together. And for those of you who are trying to still knock down that door, just keep in mind your own potential. Do not settle for less. I oftentimes had to sit there and say, well, do I want to pay this rent real quick, or do I want to sell my soul and lose sleep? You know what? I've been through worse. I'm going to sit here and not pay this rent real quick. Sometimes it seems crazy, but eventually you have to realize taking one thing to supplement a vice could get in the way of your real purpose. It could get in the way of your real opportunity. So just make sure you hold out, you know your potential, and hold out for yourself, but always stay continually working. Waiting is a verb. Wait in practice, wait in growth, wait in evolution, wait in pursuing opportunities that you do not see for yourself, so that you may create a better world and a better environment for yourself and those around you. That is how you set the example. That is how you set the standard. And always just keep the faith that, like I said before, there's so much more love and growth and so much more allyship that we have around us than the love and the hatred and the negativity that ails us, right? So just use it as motivation. And the puppy in the background agreed with me.
Yeah, he just got taken outside. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brick, for having us. It's been a great conversation. I don't know. I'm assuming you've all got social media and ways that people could reach out to you. If they want to follow up. So.
Yeah, I mean, personally, Aldous Hodge on Instagram, just Aldous Hodge, but you can check me and my team. Again, that's Phil Boutte Jr. and Michael Wanda. You can check us at 9bcollective.com, or you can check us on Instagram at 9B Collective. We're there. We love to field new talent. We love to have conversations about new ideas, new projects. So look, check us out. We are open and looking forward to talking to you.
Cool. I have no idea when we're getting cut off. Like, I don't. Are we still on?
Yeah. Yes. If you guys can all just turn off your cameras, and then we have the next set of panelists ready to get started.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We're about to start the next panel here, the impact